Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, 4 key pillars of smart continuous testing in DevOps. My name is Kinsbuner and this is a Perfecto webinar. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. So in this system, we have a Q&A panel. We encourage you to join and ask us any question during the webinar. We will do our best to address all questions during and also after the webinar. This webinar is being recorded and we will be sharing with all of you both the slides and the recording. So this is as we do for all webinars. As mentioned, my name is Kinsbuner. I am the Chief Evangelist and also author at Perfecto, which is a Perforce company, blogger, speaker, nearly 20 years in the field of test development, code development for mobile and web. I have my own personal blog and Twitter handle all over socials, so feel free to engage with me during and also after the webinar if you're not already connected. Feel free to also look at the Perfecto.io website and the blog that we have over there to learn a bit more about what Perfecto does and also learn about the latest and greatest trends in continuous testing in DevOps. With that, let's get started. In today's agenda, we're going to touch a few fundamentals in continuous testing. We're going to start with the definition of continuous testing and why it's so hard to mature it, especially when you are, an enterprise, you have multiple projects, why it's so complicated. Next, we're going to touch about the key elements of continuous testing in DevOps, the way I believe needs to be in any solution when you're trying to implement continuous testing. I'm then going to touch on the trends and the different personas that are involved in continuous testing, but also how do you balance between these different personas to make the most out of your continuous testing investment. Finally, I'm going to give you some practical measurements of continuous testing so you can embrace and use in your daily activities just to continuously improve what you are doing. During this webinar, I'm also going to do a nice and cool live demonstration of the Perfecto solution, both from a codeless as well as code-based testing, and show you how when you balance between different technologies in one single solution, you can mature your overall continuous testing activities. So let's start with the Agile testing manifesto. And when you're talking about the Agile testing, you need to look into a few things that are important. The DevOps and Agile manifesto define continuous testing as something that needs to happen all the time, not at the end of the sprint, not at the end of your software iteration. You need to invest and make sure that continuous testing is done as an automated process and activity throughout the software life cycle. Next, you need to embrace not just the functional testing. You need to make sure that continuous testing includes all the different testing types, including non-functional testing, performance, usability, accessibility, and the likes. Next, you also need to see what gives you value over just looking at a large pile of test cases, which not always provides you the right quality visibility. Also, and this is also at the second part of this webinar, testing across the team. I'm going to touch, as mentioned in the agenda, on the different personas that are involved in continuous testing, and this is where the biggest change as well as challenge comes into play, because when you're trying to do continuous testing that involves multiple personas with different skill set, with access to different technologies, you need to make sure that you have something that synchronizes between them and allows you to be efficient across the different team members. And lastly, the product coverage is the important thing and not just the code coverage. You need to make sure that you are identifying business risks associated with code features and functionalities over just measuring code coverage, which not necessarily gives you the right feedback and visibility. So what is continuous testing? When you look at continuous testing, and there can be multiple definitions, continuous testing is all about identifying business risks that are associated with software releases. The software release can be a very minor feature that you implement or multiple user stories that you implemented. But what's critical around continuous testing is the ability that a team has to identify business risks as fast as possible that are associated with the code changes. And this can only be done in an automated fashion, again, not putting too much testing into the pipeline, but putting the right amount of test cases to give you back the value. So if you look at a very simple formula around continuous testing and how it fits the DevOps, so DevOps actually means continuous delivery, the CD in the terminology. So continuous delivery equals continuous integration, which is efficient, always green unless you have real issues, plus continuous testing, which is the automated validation that are happening across the different personas in the different phases of your development. So when you combine continuous integration with continuous testing to obtain the business risks, to get the feedback back to your developers, this is where you mature continuous delivery and DevOps. But to do so, you need the continuous testing, this is the lower metric here, to have 90% of the right and stable test automation in place, okay? And the right test automation, that's the biggest challenge that we see today. People are looking at automating almost way too much and not always the right test scenarios on the right test platforms, target platforms. So to be successful in continuous testing, you need to automate only the right and high value scenarios, make sure that they are very robust, embed them into your continuous integration pipeline, and obtain the feedback through smart visibility and reporting. So when you are following these 5 phases for continuous testing, starting from a stable test automation, again, of the right scenarios, you are able to make them executable daily, okay, with fast feedback and fast results. As mentioned here, you need to be able to get results in a matter of minutes. If you have too long test scenarios, something might be wrong, okay? You need to have very precise test automation scripts that run fast and deliver feedback fast. Otherwise, something in the flow might be wrong, and you will risk getting a lot of false negatives, or you risk getting blockage in your test executions. Only when you reach the 3rd phase, when you are able to increase your coverage after you build a stable automation foundation that can run from within CI, this is when you are entering what we tend to call DevOps friendly zone. This is where you are able to establish a process that works for you and the team to run execution, test automation execution on a nightly basis, getting valuable coverage with good and meaningful feedback, okay? To do so, you need to be in a position that you get advanced validations, automation that is scalable with orchestration, up-to-date lab which can scale, and also a very robust environment control. And I will talk about these pillars later on in this webinar. But the path towards continuous testing in DevOps requires you to work in an organized and governed fashion. If you just rush into things, automate too much, and not care about the stable level of your automation, you will probably fail around here in the daily cycles, and you will fail in maturing and scaling your DevOps and continuous testing. So what are the 4 key pillars for continuous testing, the way I believe and what Perfecto believes should be the right way? So the 4 pillars under a unified solution requires you to have the right test creation solution, the ability to create robust test automation scripts for your web, mobile, and other applications with a good authoring tool and smart assertions and validation. This is the creation pillar. The next one is the ability to execute at scale with smart orchestration through CI or command line or other triggered mechanism, your test executions, and also the execution should support all the right frameworks, test automation frameworks. And I will touch on that because that's a very important pillar to consider. As mentioned, a DevOps team or a squad includes multiple personas. These personas have different skill sets, different access to different tools. You need to make sure that the execution actually links back and connects or integrates into their environments of choice. Otherwise, you will see a mismatch, and this will delay the entire process. Next, you have the lab. The lab, and you need to look at the lab as something that is a cloud-based solution. The days of DevOps that relies on a DIY, a do-it-yourself lab in-house, I think are fading away, especially when you look at high-scale test automation, test execution for mature products such as mobile and web. This is simply unsustainable. This is where you need to have a lab that is in the cloud that can support continuous testing at scale with high and robust certifications, as well as availability, 24/7 support, and these kind of things. Lastly, but not less important, is the ability to have analysis. Okay, you need to have the ability, if you go back to the definition of continuous testing, the ability to obtain business risk upon each code change can only be done through the smart reporting and analytics. Okay, you need to have something, some infrastructure that can send you back all the right amount of insights and artifacts upon each execution. And this is where the analysis piece come into play. So just to summarize the 4 pillars, what we believe as a continuous testing suite or solution, it requires the team to have access to a robust creation, execution, lab in the cloud, and analysis to be successful, to mature the processes and release in a very fast manner. Everything that is missing here, if you are missing one component, you're trying to do it yourself in-house, I've seen it happening many, many times in my career. It simply becomes a bottleneck. There is a lot of mismatches between different teams. So this is why I believe when you have a unified solution that covers all of these 4 pillars, this is when you can become more successful. Here I'm just providing you guys some more details into what each pillar means from a creation, execution, lab, and analysis perspective. Just in a high level here, from a creation perspective, if you double-click that pillar, you will see that you need to have the flexibility, especially when you deal with so many different personas and skill sets. You need to have the flexibility to work in codeless mode with BDD or ATDD friendly frameworks, or other open source frameworks such as Selenium and Appium, WebDriver.io, and the likes. Perfecto supports, by the way, all of these types of frameworks. Hence, we support all different practitioners and personas. You also need to have the ability to work with smart object locators and do visual analysis of digital apps, mobile and web, and these kind of things. In addition, and if you drill down to the execution, the ability to have execution at burst mode, flexibility and elasticity within the execution, working with CI servers such as Jenkins, Bamboo, and the like also is a key pillar here. The lab needs to be secured enterprise grade with VPN access to the back-end systems, just to enable you to do testing across the different environments, QA, staging, production, and all other sub-environments that you might have. This is where the lab shines and comes into play. And finally, and as mentioned in the previous slide on the analysis, you need to have one single pane of glass. You are going to get, as part of continuous testing activities, a lot of test artifacts from different frameworks and environments. You need to have one single view of the quality of your applications. And this is when the analysis becomes critical to your success. If you need to start stitching together different reports from different frameworks, from different teams, it takes you so much time, and this is time that you don't have. This is why you do want to have one single dashboard, one single pane of glass, as we call, for all your executions, mobile and web. So let's dive, just before the demo, into the three different personas that are active in today's reality when you're looking at continuous testing activities in DevOps. So what we see three main personas. We see the business tester, which is doing a lot of manual testing. We see the SDET, or the software developer in testing. And we see the software developers. Each persona here has unique capabilities, skill set, and also desired technologies with which is working and creating his test artifacts. Taking as an example the SDET works with BDD frameworks, with Selenium, with Appium, Espresso and XUI test. The developer is creating unit testing with JUnit, NUnit, Espresso and XUI test as well. The business tester is mostly in charge of writing business flows, doing a lot of manual testing, UX validation, but at the end of the day, if you look at the productivity of the three personas in a different, product team, you will see that the market average stands on around 60-65% test automation coverage. This is way too low to mature DevOps and to release in time with, proper risk mitigation. This is why we believe that the current model is an unoptimized model, okay? That's what I'm showing here. When you have the SDET and the developer carrying most of the load of testing with the frameworks that I mentioned earlier, you leave the business tester who is doing manual, exploratory, BDD testing, whatever, but he's left outside of the pipeline. He's not contributing test automation to the pipeline, hence your test coverage, your schedule, your release cadence is impacted and it's too slow. This is why we believe that you need to have this kind of optimized model where you combine the three different practitioners, the asset and the developers here doing a lot of code-based testing using the traditional frameworks and making sure that they maintain the test automation scripts with Espresso, XUI test, Selenium and the likes. But you need to open the door to the business testers to join the pipeline, to do automation using Cucumber. We have Perfecto codeless for web testing and mobile, okay? We have Quantum for BDD codeless testing as well. So when you're enabling these guys to do, I would say 20 to 25% test automation code, even if it's without writing actual code, but it's automation, and you allow them to merge their activities into the pipeline, joining these guys, you're able to reach almost 90% test automation and boost your release cadence, the release schedule, and also reduce the risks associated with all the code changes. Once you do so, you will see, and I will now demonstrate, you will see that with this collaborative approach, you can see codeless and code-based coming from three different personas for the same application observed in one single pipeline, in one single dashboard. This is where you gain bigger and higher control over your product development. Let me show you, how it's done in real time, okay? And with that, I will start with, a simple BDD scenario, okay, that can run from the IDE. I'm going to run it from TestNG, using TestNG from IntelliJ, okay? The TestNG here is an XML file, and it defines multiple platforms, okay, to test my application. I have here a BDD scenario, which has some custom functions in Java. For example, when I am on a Google search page, this is how the function looks like. When I am on a Google search page, actually it goes to a specific URL. Okay? Here I'm actually going to search the project Quantum. That's the Perfecto BDD open source framework. And I'm going to run a set of scenarios. You can see here, I'm going to run a bunch of, I'd say, 5 different scenarios, test scenarios, which have code base at the backbone. I'm going to run them in the Perfecto cloud, okay, on 2 devices. Let's go to the dashboard, and we can see, that the execution starts. Once the execution starts, you will see in the dashboard the smartphones, the iOS and the Android devices being populated. And you see a BDD scenario being executed. That's the approach from a code-based perspective, okay? That's the execution. When you go to the Perfecto dashboard or report, okay? 1 second, please. As you can see, the execution started. Okay, I will soon show you the dashboard. You will see that an iPhone 6s was just launched. Soon, an Android device will also come up. Okay, and you see here when I go to the google.com on the log here. So that's a simple test execution. You see another Galaxy S8 Android device running. So you see execution running in parallel, and that's running from IntelliJ IDE on the Perfecto cloud. That's one persona. Let's think of the SDET in that regard, executing his test automation script. Okay, but now let's go to the Perfecto codeless, and that's where the business tester is going to do his work. And I'll go to an exploratory test scenario, okay? And the exploratory goes to a website, Hargreaves Lansdowne, okay? And I'm going to execute also this test scenario, okay, on the Perfecto cloud. In just a second. Now a desktop browser is going to be also populated. A new desktop virtual machine is going to be created, and the execution will also start. While it's being executed, I can go to the test analysis, okay? And what you will see in the test analysis, if I go to the live stream, you can see that few things are happening. You see the remote web driver, okay? That's the web activities that are being executed. Okay, that's the codeless execution that I've just triggered, the Hargreaves Lansdowne. You can see it here being executed. Okay, but in parallel to that, I still have the BDD scenarios. That's the demonstration of 2 different personas, SDET and business tester, doing this in parallel test execution on different platforms, web and mobile, in one single place, okay? At the end of the day, and as mentioned in the previous slides, you see everything, in one single place. You see here the Selenium, that's the code-based execution that I executed with BDD, okay? I can go, here you can see the Samsung Galaxy S8 that was executed. The report is now being generated. And the codeless is still running on the different browsers. It all sums and goes to one place. If I want, I can go to the last, I'd say, few months while this is still being executed. Okay, I can go 3 months back. And what you can see in that view is that an aggregated number of, I would say, 782 test cases were executed. You can see all the failures here. And also you can see in one single view all the Selenium test cases that were executed by the SDET. You can see the codeless activities that were executed by the business testers, all in one single dashboard. And that's a huge benefit to the different teams. If I was executing things from my CI, at the end of the execution and also during the execution, I could have seen all the different jobs like the Hargreaves Lansdowne here executed and all the trends around the execution. So you can see, and that's the pillar of the analysis. If we go back to the 4 pillars of creation, execution, lab, and analysis, the creation that I've just showed you was with BDD and codeless, okay? The ability to create Selenium and codeless Selenium in one single solution. The execution done from IDE or from CI or from the web, depending on your skill set and your environment. Lastly, and everything was executed in the cloud. Lastly, you can see the analysis piece here with all the report library, the heat map, the live stream, what happens in real time. And also, if something failed, in my case, I didn't have that many failures, but if you had a failure, in most cases, you will get the failure and block reasons through the machine learning component that Perfecto has. Okay? So just before I wrap up the demo, you see that the execution finished. I didn't have any issues, luckily. The execution was done. You have seen it all in the report. In parallel, you have seen also the codeless testing running in the cloud, okay, on different browsers. So let's go back now to the presentation. We have shown you here execution of BDD test code in parallel on 2 smartphones, the mobile iPhone and the Android. You have seen execution of codeless on 2 different browsers, okay? And you have seen the execution running and visible in one single dashboard, in one single report, filtered or differentiated by the origin, whether it was codeless, Selenium, Appium, could have been Espresso or XUI test. So with that, okay, let's look at what's blocking teams to be in the position that I've just demonstrated, what's holding them back. What we see and what I've investigated over the past few years in this space, some actually experiences led me to write the previous books. So I've seen, the time that teams have to create test automation as one of the biggest blockers, okay? People, development team develop new features, new user stories day in and day out, but time is not enough, is not sufficient enough for the test developers, the SDETs, the business testers to validate them in a timely fashion. And that's when you do not have the right feedback loop to the developers. Lack of test automation stability and reliability. Test execution management isn't smart enough, okay? You do not have the ability to schedule and orchestrate your execution in a very efficient way. The maintenance of test cases, you created once a test automation, but when you start maturing your product and you neglect or you need to continuously maintain older scripts, this is when the process becomes flaky and unreliable. Okay, that's another challenge that we see in test automation. And additional one, that's the test automation tool stack. I have shown you in the previous demo that when you are able to balance between codeless, code-based, different frameworks, different execution environments, this is where you have the flexibility to succeed. When you are stuck or blocked in one tool chain that does not allow you to, tailor your objective of testing, your testing objective to the frameworks that you want to use, this is where you come in short with test automation coverage. So how can you overcome these challenges? And these are not that complex solutions, but you need to do your own due diligence in-house and consider these if you want to evolve your test automation maturity. Some of the clients that I work with over the past years and also in the current days are considering BDD, codeless test automation, ATDD, and other mature software development practices. Others are killing all the shadow CIs. I've seen too many CI pipelines running in parallel. When you are able to eliminate all the different CIs and only look at one CI for every continuous testing activities that you have, this is where you see great value coming back from test automation. When you need to jump between one build, one CI to the other, you're getting lost. Also, consider adjusting your test pyramid. Okay, we all know the unit integration and API testing test pyramid. You need to see where you can get the highest value in your test automation. Lastly, you can also consider leveraging faster test frameworks. We know that test frameworks such as XUI test, Espresso for the mobile, browser headless frameworks such as Google Puppeteer. These are examples of frameworks that produces test results faster with less setup. Consider these as well. This can allow you all of these 4 pillars or suggestions can allow you to cope with the challenge of less time to automate and test. Lastly, on the test automation stability, I think I mentioned in the codeless piece that when you match codeless to the right personas, codeless with machine learning allows you to have a better maintenance of your test scripts. You need to follow best practices, like a page object model. Treat test automation code as test code, as production code. Stabilize your lab and make sure that you have your platform in a ready state mode before starting the execution. People think about the execution, but they don't think about the environment in which the execution happens too often. And then, the execution gets blocked and they need to start reverting and, do some reverse engineering to understand what happened. You need to have as a guidelines, as a process, this best practice of making sure that the platforms are in ready state mode, that you have the right object identifiers. These are all known practices in the test automation landscape, but I see too many pitfalls happening in too many projects. So you need to refine the processes and make sure that you continuously maintain. And even if you reuse the same test automation suite over and over again, you still need to go back, maintain, do some refactoring, do some peer reviews on the frameworks, just to make sure that you maintain, robustness of your execution. With regards to the intelligence of test execution, this is all about the lab tagging, being able to be in control of your test execution. We are looking at, and I've shown you in the demo, of executions on mobile devices and desktop browsers. These are very dynamic platforms. You need to make sure that you have full control over the environment and you can execute at scale with elasticity, and also at the end of the day, be able to get the right results with tagging and other analytics hooks, so you can get the value back from the test cases. The test execute to give you some value. If you cannot obtain the value at the end of execution through smart reporting, you're going to miss all the investment that you've done on the test offering. These are some nice practices that I've collected over the past few years with regards to test creation, test authoring, and if you're practicing few of these, fine. If you are not, I strongly recommend that you look at, doing some more pairing and coaching in between the different team members. Make sure that you're using right object identification strategy. Work with your developers. Make sure that your object locators are more robust than ever. If you're using codeless with machine learning, this can solve some of the object maintenance for you. If not, again, make sure that you're using page object model. Work with development. Synchronize object locators, and make your life easier in that regard. Continuously measure your test efficiency within the CI. If you see test cases that are failing over and over again within the CI, the first step will be obviously to exclude them from the CI, but I would actually go way back and see why they were included in the CI from the first step before making sure that they are producing reliable results. Entering the CI requires strong certification. You need to have a strong and strict gating process to allow a test to enter the CI. If you are allowing easily new test cases to enter the CI without certifying them, you are risking in breaking builds day in and day out, and that's not what continuous testing, continuous delivery is all about. So how can you improve? These are a few recommended continuous testing measurements that I've collected. One of them is make sure that you have some kind of a visibility on the test duration. See the test cases are not exceeding 3 to 5 minutes. If they are, consider breaking them into sub-test cases. See how many flaky tests you have. If you have area of test cases that are flaky, you are losing code coverage. You're losing production code coverage, and this is very bad. You won't know that before you measure. So these are a few measurements of your, I would say, testing efficiency. Okay. In addition, you need to see how much time you spend on mean time to detect the defect. If it takes you too long, okay, something on the monitoring side or your test automation feedback loop is not optimized enough. Number of escape defects. There is a method called DRE, defect identification efficiency. This is when you see defects that are either found in the early stages, this is the shift left concept, compared or divided by the defects that are found after production, after releasing. You need to see the balance between these and see why you are finding too many escape defects later on in the process. It can be coverage, it can be wrong platform testing that you're doing, it can be lack of test automation in the right areas as well. So this is also a nice metric to consider. There are other metrics here that you can pick and choose from. If you have your own, that's fine. But again, these are a few success story metrics that I've collected over the past few years that allow teams to improve their overall continuous testing efficiency. So with that, let's just summarize, what Perfecto 4 pillars of continuous testing, and I've demonstrated to you in this webinar the creation flexibility, the execution at scale, and also the analysis. So let's just wrap the things in this upcoming few short slides. So from a creation perspective, if you look at the Perfecto overall suite, you see that you can choose from all the traditional open source frameworks such as Appium, Selenium, Espresso, and XUI Test. You can use Perfecto Quantum BDD open source, which is based on TestNG, and Cucumber BDD, as mentioned, to write Gherkin scripts with underlying Selenium and Appium custom functions in Java, from IntelliJ, as I've demonstrated, or from Eclipse. Execution of them, again, is in the cloud. For web, you also have Perfecto Codeless, and I've demonstrated to you how you can run Perfecto Codeless on different browsers with an Object Spy tool and other advanced capabilities. Execution in Perfecto, since it's a cloud-based solution, you have unlimited execution with queuing, prioritization, and burst mode, and also sharding if you want to distribute execution across multiple devices or platforms to expedite your test execution cycle. It's also supported in the cloud. Again, a large, and this is just a subset, test automation frameworks are fully supported. Automation frameworks, execution frameworks, orchestration, and also CI servers are all supported to allow you to schedule and execute your test automation. The lab, as mentioned, is an enterprise-grade one in the cloud across multiple geographies with full certifications such as PCI DSS, CSA, and others. We have an always-on SLA with 24/7 NOC for monitoring disconnections or other issues that you might have with self-healing capabilities. All of the other advanced features such as environment control, artifact collection, videos, logs, crash logs, network hard files, and more are fully supported. We support same-day device and operating system for mobile and web. You have the full access for latest iOS 13, Android Q, the latest Chrome and Firefox browsers. Everything is fully supported. With regards to analysis, and I urge you to look into your current state in your organization, how much time you spend in gathering all the test execution artifacts, how much time you spend in drilling into a single test report and finding the needle in a haystack. This is where Perfecto Analytics here provides you a very easy and efficient way based on machine learning and AI algorithms, so so you can expedite your fast feedback loop across the different digital platforms, mobile and web. I've shown you in the report during the demo that you can see Codeless, Selenium, BDD, and all the other artifacts from CI and from the IDE, all gathered in one single UI for fast visibility and fast feedback. Lastly, you have the CI dashboard here, and I showed you also a demo that you can see the trends around the jobs that you're launching from different branches. So this is also something that is unique, and we are very proud of it. I think it allows you to get greater visibility into the entire activities happening in your pipeline. So to summarize the entire, the webinar and the solution, so Perfecto provides a smart continuous testing solution for web and desktop web, and mobile applications, supporting smart creation, execution in a cloud-based lab with smart analytics, backed by black belt professional service testing experts, dedicated success managers, and 24/7 support. This is what the Perfecto by Perforce solution is all about. With that, I would like to leave some time for Q&A, and I've seen that we have quite a few questions piling up. So let's leave some time for some questions, and I'm ready to address them now.
Thank you very much, Yaron. I believe we do have a few minutes left for questions. We will answer as many questions as possible, and if we run out of time, we'll get back to you via email. Our first question from the audience asks, what can teams do if they are lacking one or more of the key pillars?
Sure, that's a great question, and I would try to address it in a, I don't like to answer with the depend fashion, because, if I talk, when you refer to the 4 pillars of continuous testing, creation, execution, lab, and analysis, the way I presented, so if you are lacking a lab today and you're using do-it-yourself, it's quite easy. You just need to configure. If you're moving to Perfecto, you just need to configure your execution to a cloud-based solution. If you're lacking reports today because you created some test unit reporting in-house, etc., it will be quite hard for you to switch, but at the end of the day, it probably is going to be a well invested effort by your team to move to a one unified solution of all these pillars, creation, execution, lab, and analysis, and leaving one or two from one, let's say, vendor, and the rest you are doing it yourself or stitching them together. So if you are in a place that you do not have all the 4 pillars unified in one single solution that you have full ownership and control, I would recommend to identify what is the most painful area, if it's the execution layer, if it's the analysis layer, and start seeing how you can stitch one or integrate it to the 2 other pillars that you already have. If everything is distributed or stitched together, I would recommend looking in some kind of a solution that provides all of these pillars under one single roof. It will pay off in the long term, because otherwise you'll probably find yourself working and maintaining endlessly your different pillars.
Great. Our next question is, why is it important to have a lab that is cloud-based? Sure.
As I mentioned and actually demonstrated in the webinar, when you are when you have a lab which is DIY, do it yourself, and not in the cloud, what you are actually missing is few things. One is the elasticity. Okay, elasticity allows you to burst and go back to a lower scale as your product lifecycle evolves. That's one thing. So the elasticity is one thing. The second one is the security. When you have the lab in your own premise, which you need to manage and maintain, you are risking security. You have platforms which have secure and very sensitive data on premise, Some employees might take them home. Some employees might lose them. You have zero governance of what's going on with your platform. Third, I would say, important pillar here is the same-day support. When you have one lab that you own and maintain in-house, you are less, I would say, flexible in supporting new platforms, new operating systems. We see every month a new Chrome and Firefox browser being released, beta versions and GA. We see beta versions of iOS and Android. You see new smartphones being released. When it's your own job to maintain them in-house, you are very slow to address them, and this is delaying the entire R&D activities. When you get it as a service in the cloud, you're much more agile. You are able to focus on your own activities, on the quality activities, without really being an IT manager for all these digital environments.
Okay, our next question is, how can teams improve visibility throughout the continuous testing process?
So I've touched a bit on the continuous visibility to the smart reporting. I think that, and actually I met a customer of ours as well as a prospect who are doing execution at large scale today. And one of the clients that I met told me that before he started using the Perfecto platform, he was spending over 72 hours just looking at test automation results from a regression suite. This is a huge amount of time spent just to drill down into the issues, even before starting to analyze and resolve them. So teams must get fast access to results with error classification, with filtering capabilities, because when you execute thousands and tens of thousands of test execution on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and you need to spend 3 days just to analyze the reports, this is a huge hole in your entire process, and this is not something that can allow you to move towards continuous delivery. So teams need to look at what's holding them back. In the reporting perspective, it's usually the ability to classify the errors based on the root cause, the ability to look into the CI report and see which job failed and why, the ability to see which platform or which test case is more flaky than the other. So all the level of analytics from a single test report up until different platform comparison and the CI, this is where team needs to look and focus on so they can be efficient, improve their continuous usability, and this will also improve their ability to move towards continuous delivery.
All right, our next question is, which key pillar do you find that teams struggle with the most?
Wow, that's a tough one. I did mention, that we believe that there are 4 pillars here. I would say that the 2 most challenging ones that I've seen over the past few years, especially when we're advancing mobile and web technologies, are the creation and the analysis. Okay, not that the other ones are less problematic, but teams were able to kind of be creative around resolving or working around this, the execution and the lab. It wasn't efficient, but it was less complicated. The complication mostly starts with creation because, as mentioned, we have so many technologies. You have so many personas with different and varying skill sets. And at the end of the day, you execute at such large scale, so you need to efficiently analyze all the results. And these are the 2 pillars that I find, at least from my experience, the most challenging one. Again, the creation and the analysis. But just to go back to my summary slide, I do think that if you want to have a successful continuous testing strategy, you want to have these 4 pillars in one single solution.
Great, and we have time for one last question. This one asks, what role does AI play with this?
Okay, yeah. So I think that today, or I said 2019 as a year is one of the most advanced here that I've seen on machine learning and AI, especially in continuous testing. Perfecto also took a step forward in embracing AI technologies. And as I mentioned in the previous question that you asked around creation and analysis, we believe that these are the two most sophisticated pillars in continuous testing. So in the creation, Perfecto advanced and enhanced creation using machine learning with Perfecto Codeless. I have shown you in the demo. So Perfecto Codeless has a machine learning algorithm that allows you to maintain all the object locators in an automated fashion, so you do not need to maintain it on your own. And on the lab, as well as the analysis, Perfecto also did a lot of self-healing and also error classification, so you can get down to the root cause of issues very fast. So I believe that AI is starting to play a key role in continuous testing, and it will also become more advanced in the future to allow more autonomous testing, a very fast feedback loop between QA, dev, and the business. So obviously, when you look at the future of DevOps, AI cannot be excluded from the overall process. So AI is becoming a key fundamental in the overall continuous testing and DevOps processes. So I think if there are more questions, I will try and address all of them after the webinar. But with that, I would like to thank all of you that joined the webinar and have been active asking questions. And I'm looking forward to engage with you and see you in the next webinar. Thank you so much.